The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by the producers of this broadcast. The material herein is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome to the special Halloween edition of Scary Stories by Kalila. Tonight's supposed to be the scariest night of the year. It's Halloween. It's a full moon.
It is indeed. Isn't it great?
Yes.
It's beautiful.
I'm afraid something very strange is happening to Allan right now. I'm not sure what, but you know, it's always been rumored that Allan kind of got bit by one too many werewolves along the way. I, of course, dress like a she-devil, and at least that's what my ex-husband calls me. So, and Miss Lynda here is Miss Halloween herself with her boo dress. Look at that. I'm going to call it a boo dress because she's covered with little boo ghosts.
The spirit of Halloween.
We are the spirit of Halloween. Yes, indeed, we are. So happy Halloween, everybody. It's kind of a crazy Halloween this year, 2020. And I guess there's a lot of places that aren't allowing any trick-or-treating going on or any Halloween parties. No bars, no parties, no dancing, no trick-or-treating. Well, let me tell you.
However, candy sales are up 25% over last year.
They are. They are.
I have
We
a
need
feeling,
some candy.
Well, I have a feeling that liquor sales are up as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Because
yeah.
I'm here to tell you that even though the bars have been closed, the people are still drinking. They're bringing their booze with them, and they're drunker than normal. And people are having a good time anyway in New Orleans. So it doesn't matter. So it really doesn't matter. You can stop people from drinking in certain places, but you're not going to stop people from drinking and eating candy. That's all there is to it. We're going to do it. So anyway, we're going to be talking about a variety of things tonight. First off, let's talk a little bit about Halloween and what it means. Because Halloween is supposedly, they call it a lot of things. They call it the Witch's New Year. They call it, in a lot of cultures, the night that the veil between our world and the spirit world is the thinnest. And I really believe that. I really do. We see a lot more phenomena in the paranormal on as it gets closer to Halloween. And of course, you know, the day after Halloween is All Saints Day. November 2nd is the Day of the Dead, or All Souls Day in the Catholic Church. So, I mean, these are traditions that are celebrated in many different cultures, many different religions, and many different spiritual paths and belief systems. So, I believe that it's the thinnest during the Halloween season. What do you guys think? Well, Allan, we know what you think.
We know what you think. I think that's true because think about it. Everyone is in that mindset. You either have those that have the tradition that they are welcoming the spirits. Everybody knows that Halloween started with wearing the mask because of the fact that it was to scare off the spirits. And then you have folks just all in one tune. So you would think you do happen to see a little bit more unusual things during Halloween.
Yeah,
I think it's probably because everybody's synced into that one mindset. You have a lot of things going on, and
the original mask wearing was to frighten off. They believed that if this was the night that the spirits roamed the earth, that evil spirits would also roam the earth, and they carved jack-o'-lanterns. And I say this, you know, I'm referring to Celtic traditions. The Druids are very famous for doing a lot of the early Halloween, or what we call Samhain traditions. The Druids did this, and they would carve. Actually, there were no pumpkins, from what I understand, in Ireland. They had gourds. They had plants that are called gourds. I'm not real sure what a gourd is, but it's kind of like a pumpkin, kind of like an eggplant. I don't know, something like that. But they would carve them, and they would make really scary faces and put candles in them and light them up so that you see your way in the dark. And they would also wear scary masks. The children would wear scary masks to scare away the evil spirits. And this is where the early Halloween traditions began. And it all started with the Druids. And in every civilization, every religion, all of these other cultures also had their tradition of Halloween and celebration of the spirits. What do you say about that, Lynda? Because Lynda's from San Antonio, and she's also of Mexican descent, and your ancestors celebrated the Day of the Dead.
Yes, we do, and what goes on the Day of the Dead is, of course, the offerings, you set up what is known as the altar. And when you set up the altar, you're putting a special meaning behind it, and you're putting photos of your loved ones. So it's different from that regular altar that other people create. This is just an altar that's created once a year for this month. So, as the beginning of the month, everybody starts building up their altar. And that's one thing that we definitely we talk a lot about, in the seance room, because of the fact that it's so, we hold it dear to our hearts of what the Dia de los Muertos is about. So yes, that is one tradition that we all carry. And it goes all the way back to the Aztec. So,
wow. Yeah.
So, and it happened, but everybody always thinks that it has this whole we're not scaring off. We're actually lighting the way for our family to be able to find their way back once they visit us. So,
oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. So, Allan, our skeptic. So where do you think? Where do you think of all this Halloween? I mean, do you think the veil's the thinnest? Come on, Allan. I mean, come on. You gotta know that there's a different feeling in the air. You can feel the
Yes,
spirit.
there is.
You feel.
Yeah. We're gonna dive in, and let's get agricultural for a minute.
Sure.
Okay, because we didn't get to the Industrial Revolution until relatively recently. Most of these traditions are older, and I'll be back in 1 second because I need to de-werewolf for a moment. There we go.
It wasn't his dentures, folks.
He's transforming.
Those are really my teeth. I paid for them. Trust me. So, now let's go back to the source of these. Let's go back to the Druids. Let's go back to the original early cultures that began having this. October is a really pivotal month if you think about it, because if you don't get through October, you're probably not going to live till spring. You got to get all the crops in. You got to get all the animals taken care of. You've got this huge amount of work from August till the end of October. You've got the harvest. You've got everything to be brought in, everything to be handled. And beginning in October, running through to whenever the snows and everything came wherever you lived, all the predators are now trying to fatten up.
Oh, yeah.
So I can really, really easily go with, the bad things, whether they're spirits or animals or whatever, they're out there looking to eat you. Because before these things start hibernating or have to move or migrate or whatever they're going to do, they're trying to pack on some pounds. So I can, so I mean, it is just not a big leap of faith to go from the agricultural world right into the spiritual world, because this is everything you worked for so hard all year. You've protected these crops. You've kept the critters out of them. This is going to be the food you're going to live on until you have new food again. And also, this was really seasonal eating. I really loved getting into the history of food around the year, because we're heading into the fall. That is when the animals are at their best. They got good fur. The fur is thick, and it's going to be good. It's going to be good protection for you, because that fur is going to be its best. It's going to be getting ready for winter, and the animals should be well fed after a good summer. And so you're really trying to pack these things in. And if you think about the full moon in October, generally the leaves have begun dropping, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we say the veil is thinnest, I think it's because the moon is now so much brighter. You have so much less stuff between you and what you're trying to look at. So, yeah, I could very easily go with, Kalila's statement, the veil is thinner, going, we got a lot more light. And as humans, we're not nocturnal creatures. So any extra light we get at night is just going to help us get out there and do more work, do more hunting, do more of these things that we need to do to survive the winter. Because, the reason we have parties in the middle of winter is to remind us we're not dead yet. We've made it to here.
I thought it was because it's comfortable. It's nice and cool outside.
It's not comfortable in the middle of winter. It's cold. It's miserable.
Depends on where you are. I mean,
it depends where you're at.
But we're talking about the source of the
State.
traditions. We're talking about the source of these traditions.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about the Druids, I mean, Ireland, it's pretty.
Yeah, I'm going back to your Russian traditions, your European traditions. A lot of Native American traditions are still, the great herds were moving at that time. So you had to, one thing we have forgotten in the modern world is nature don't care what your schedule is. And what I mean by that is if you guys need to pick blackberries because that's, a big foodstuff for you, when they get ripe, the plants don't care about you. You got to drop everything you're doing and go do that. When the corn is ready to be brought in, it doesn't matter what you thought you were doing. You got to go take care of the corn. If, you have an animal migration moving through, guess what? There goes the grocery store. So, it's not on your schedule, it's on their schedule. And so when you see something like a full moon, I can leap right to the spiritual with you immediately and go, hey, we could see better, we could get out, we could work later, we could do all these things, and that would make it so much more special.
Okay.
Just adds to the survival. So, I can't pick on the spiritualism of it because I can see very easily why they regarded these things so amazing.
All right, well, let's take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the traditions of Halloween and some spooky stories. We'll be right back. Follow me, Kalila Smith, into the mysterious world of spirits. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters, is a concise how-to manual for anyone who enjoys a good ghost hunt. Learn the history of spiritualism, learn what a ghost is and what is not. Learn the truth about poltergeist. We'll also delve into the realm of spiritual beings that never were human, the world of demons, real vampires, and we'll look at some real case studies. This is a must-have for everyone interested in ghost hunting, from the novice to the expert. Completely updated in its second edition, this is one of the first guides for ghost hunting based on actual first-hand experiences. Available on Amazon.com. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters by Kalila Smith. Okay, so we are back for some scary Halloween stuff, and everybody's got a Halloween story, and oddly enough, a lot of the Halloween stories are oftentimes urban legends that you hear all over the place. However, Lynda's got one that's specific to San Antonio, and I think a lot of people have probably heard of it. Some of you may have not, but it's a very famous Halloween story. Mm-hmm. So Lynda, tell us about those creepy little children.
Well, if you're from Texas and you're from the San Antonio area, and if you're not in the San Antonio area, if you're just from Texas, you know about the treks.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody knows about the treks in San Antonio. And, you know, legend goes that there was a bus filled with kids. And when the kid, you know, all the kids were on the bus, as they were going, the bus stopped on the track and the train hit it. So we know that it was a tragic story. Very sad. And the streets do have children's names when you go there. And every Halloween is known. And even when it's not Halloween, but Halloween was where you always have cars lined up. And the neighborhoods are not very happy about that. But everyone guilty. Everyone is, you know, has to do it once. And so you put baby powder on the car. And when you put the baby powder on the car, you put your car on neutral and you let yourself go. And it moves up and over the tracks and down. Now, here's the thing. People have said that it's due to the way the ground was leveled. Skeptics say, you know, it's impossible. It's gravity, you know, pulling down. But what do we say to the folks that claim that there was hands on the powder that they left? Well, I kind of have an idea, and I know Allan has an idea. And it's such a great story, and it's one that you just never want to take away from anybody. But you later find out, when you see a lot of forensic shows, you find out that prints, a lot of folks forget that they leave their prints, they leave their kids' prints. So when you put the powder, you're so focused on putting that powder, you get in the car, you take off. And of course, if it's a windy day, that wind's going to go, right? What's going to happen? The nature is blowing the powder off, and you're seeing prints. Some of it may be the illusion of our prints or the children's prints. But it is creepy out there because it's out in the country. So when you're out there, if you had a chance back in the days, you were able to do this. And this is considered a Halloween tradition to do.
So now they don't have the tracks anymore. Can you still get to the road? Can people still go and take part in this Halloween tradition?
Yes, they can still go. The only thing is, I don't think the effect works the same, only because of the fact that they have done some changes. Not only that, you have police always keep an eye out there around this time, because you know, subdivision has, you know, San Antonio has grown, more houses are out there, and a lot of people do not want the streets to be congested with a
Clogged
lot
up with crazy people with baby powder.
Exactly. And but you know, out there, there is an eerie feeling out there because of the fact that it is out there around where the missions are, and on that, you know, parts of that area, it's pretty dark. You know, I myself wouldn't want to be out there only by myself. So, and I don't think it's because of the spirits I fear. It's kind of fearing who you may bump into. Because it's in a area that, you know, now I really don't know, because I know that there's been a lot of changes. So, but it was a area that homes started, you know, building, and this is why they have leveled the street so nobody can go try the railroad tracks anymore.
Well, yeah,
Fun.
having done it a few decades ago,
That's right. You're in
Uh,
Texan. That's right. Yeah.
I am, yes.
I always
So
forget
yeah,
that.
I have to. Yes, you can tell by my rich Texan accent. Yeah, I know.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
you just remember Texas is a really big place, and there's a lot to it. But the San Antonio tracks actually was one of the world's greatest accidental optical illusions because you really were still going downhill. But because of the way the optics were set up against the skyline, of course, you're local, so you're not looking at the overall grand scheme of where you're standing. You're looking at local and you're saying, oh, well, there's a railway track and a bump, so I must be going uphill. But the trick is you were already going downhill. And the railway track was indeed a bump in the road, but it never wasn't high enough to bring you to zero. So the vehicle would roll over it. You know, you'd take the brakes off and your car would roll right over it. And Lynda already gave away why there's all the little handprints on the back. You know.
I couldn't let you have that one, Alan.
Yeah,
I
You're
but
right.
I'll add how I knew it was fake 25 years ago was the friend of mine that took me out there to show me that this was real had a cat. And apparently dozens of cats got together and pushed his car over the railway. Because that was all the little prints on the back. There were
Oh
no
my
children,
gosh, it's too
but there were
funny.
little cat footprints all over this
Cat
thing.
footprints.
So, you know, that's how I knew right
Oh,
then
that's too funny.
that, you know, and of course you got to have the Scooby-Doo effect. Well, you know, a busload of children died here. No, they didn't. There was never a busload of children. There was never a train accident. There was, you know,
It wasn't?
no.
No, there
Oh.
wasn't. That was the
Oh,
thing.
There
I'm
was
glad there wasn't any killed children, but
no.
goes
It's
that
the
story.
Scooby-Doo effect. It's, you know, somebody tells the campfire story, then they got a weird anomaly. You marry the two together. Now you've got an urban legend for all time.
Yes, you know, because of the fact that I became, you know, a paranormal investigator, and I like doing all that stuff. You have to do your research. You have to make sure that this is, you know, some truth to it or something. But there were no records. Nobody could ever find any history of a bus being wrecked. So that was a good thing.
I remember in high school, you know, there was always the terrible car wreck. And when the paramedics got there, the radio was playing Stairway to Heaven. You know, oh, come on, you know, welcome to the urban legends. The fact that we can tie them loosely to Halloween gets even better. You know, I love what is it? The shadow figures. I love shadow figures at Halloween. Like people aren't running around dressed in black wearing costumes. You know, well, I didn't see any feet. Okay, it was dark. You ever heard of black shoes? You know, it's like, oh, but they were, you know,
Well,
they were wearing blue jeans and there was nothing below
in the cemeteries. Supposedly,
Mm.
that's when the shadows are out and about. All those
Again,
dark, shadowy
big full
figures.
moon, great shadows.
Those
You just don't
spiritual
know, Alan, though. There has to be
hang out
some.
in the cemeteries. There's got to be something to it. People see it all the time. And I can tell you, from a paranormal perspective, we do get more photographic phenomena during the Halloween season. As it gets closer to Halloween, the veil thins out. And we do... Stop it, Alan. The veil thins out, Alan. And we do get more phenomena. We get more photographs. We get more EVPs. As a medium, we get more messages coming through. There's a lot more spiritual communication coming through. People get a lot more signs from their loved ones. It's not all the Scooby-Doo effect. Lots of times it is your loved ones coming through, trying to reach out to you, and they can do it a little bit easier when the veil is the thinnest. So there's a lot of that going on. So there is a lot more phenomena, not only in the paranormal, but also in mediumship. Seances and table lifting and all of that kind of stuff, table tipping. A lot more
I do have to
phenomena.
agree with that. This is where I do jump on the Kalila train.
Come to
I
the
knew you were going to
dark
turn on me
side.
eventually.
We
It's
have
okay.
cookies.
I told you, Alan. I am the investigator, but I can also be a skeptic. I have to always
Well, you
be
have to. I can
both
also be a
sides. But
skeptic too. I've been the skeptic at
No, no,
times.
Kalila,
Not
I got to
often.
tell you, you are a spectacular skeptic.
I
I got
don't.
to throw in, for anybody listening and watching, Kalila is truly, honestly, a magnificent skeptic because I have done many an investigation with her. And the funnest part is we'll be walking along. And of course, let's face it, neither one of us is exactly 20 anymore. You know what I mean? So we're walking along. And if you think we're going to sit here for the next 8 hours waiting on something to knock on the door, we ain't.
No.
So,
We're gonna
here
set
we
up
go.
equipment and we're gonna go. All right, let's go get something to eat. Go back to the hotel and we'll come check this out tomorrow.
We're stumping and thrumping through the property. We whip a door open and Kalila's over there going, it's dead in here. Wrong kind of dead. Ain't nothing. Let's go. It's so,
No sense wasting time.
I think that was the
I
great
agree
thing.
totally.
I have to agree with that because I think that's the great thing that when you've done a lot of investigations, you go into these different steps in your journey and you start understanding exactly what the Kalilas and Allens are talking about, and you hold on to the belief because you know there's something out there. There are things that you have seen, but it doesn't happen constantly all the time. And you also start getting that whole hang of knowing, you know what, I don't feel anything. I'm just not going to, it's not happening. It's just,
Yeah,
this
if it's
is
gonna
not,
happen, usually
it's
if
going
it's
to
gonna
happen.
happen, it's gonna happen in the first few minutes that you're there. You're gonna well, somebody like me, I'm gonna feel it when I get there. If something's gonna happen, it's gonna happen when you walk into that room and you find it. I mean, that's when you're gonna see those orbs taking off, or that's when you're gonna see, something out of the corner of your eye. If it's gonna happen, it'll happen pretty quickly. I don't believe in sitting there all night anymore and waiting. It's a waste of time. But on that note, we're going to be right back. We're going to take a little break and we're going to come back and talk about some more Halloween fun.
Submitted for your approval. New Orleans. Seductive, magical, mysterious, and haunted. There is no place on this earth with as much ghost and vampire activity as New Orleans. Imagine, if you will, a tour. A tour that takes you to sites in the French Quarter of actual documented hauntings. The Haunted History Tour is just that tour. Every day, every night, all year round. This tour has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN. And it's available to you. Are there ghosts and vampires in the French Quarter? Find out by taking the tour that everyone is talking about. The Haunted History Tour. For more information, call Haunted History Tours at 861-2727. That's 861-2727. This is not a Halloween spook house. This is real.
Okay, so we're back. And of course, if we're going to talk about Halloween, we've got to talk about Memphis. So, Alan,
Absolutely.
you got a lot of stories there, but you got the story for Halloween.
Let's start with like the Lichterman House. This one is a well-known it's now the Lichterman Nature Center, but it is said to be haunted by Mrs. Lichterman herself, who periodically peers from the top windows. Of course, the world-famous Orpheum Theater boasts its own ghost. A young girl is said to haunt the Orpheum, and it is actually a documented death. So you can't actually go, this is who died and this is who's supposed to be haunting the property. Then, of course, we have, anything loosely associated with the Civil War. Memphis was also the site of numerous yellow fever epidemics, and we still have yellow fever mass graves in certain areas of the town. Just to make that all that joyousness. And of course, we have the magnificent both alive and dead, in the perpetual Schrodinger state, we have Elvis.
You gotta have Elvis.
Um, it shocks and amazes me that so many people that come here to see Elvis. Now, this is dying down now that Elvis would be in his 80s or older. Okay, at this point, if Elvis had lived, he'd be really, really old for a rock and roll performer.
Yeah, because he died in what, 1977?
77.
Yeah, my daughter was a year old. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in his 40s then.
Yeah, that was
so
47 years ago. Yeah.
We have the mutual state that we have people that come, and they don't come as much as they used to. There are the month of August, the Elvis experience would top over 200,000 people coming just to pay homage to his death in August. And Memphis in August is probably about as awful as it can get. And this is a beautiful city about 4 or 5 months a year. August is not our month. It is hot, it is miserable, and it is humid. And we got people here from all over the world that do not comprehend 105 to 110 degree heat index. You will boil, people. If you are from a cold country, don't think you're going to camp. You're just adding to our ghost itinerary.
Yeah.
But Elvis's spirit, of course, both in song and legend, is said to haunt Graceland. He's supposed to be seen periodically here and there. And yet we also have, sightings of living Elvis in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and other such. So take your pick, which Elvis you want.
Wow. So I have to ask, I got to ask, because, so do the people, because you know how people are, people want to argue. People always want to argue about stuff. And, so do the people who believe that Elvis is dead argue with the people who believe Elvis is not dead? Does that happen?
Oh, no. It is Schrodinger's Elvis. He exists in both states simultaneously.
Oh, he bilocates. Okay. So,
yeah, no.
So
seriously.
If Elvis is still alive, where do they think he is? Because, in the beginning when Elvis died, people thought that he still was alive. What do they think happened to him? Where do they think he went? Do they think he was abducted by aliens?
Well, yeah. You're going to dive into this one, huh? Okay.
It's Halloween. We might as well, right?
Welcome to Halloween.
Leave no stone unturned because it's Halloween.
There you
how
go.
far did the legends go? How far did the legends go?
How far do they go?
Even Tommy Lee Jones and MIB looked at Will Smith and said, "No, sir, Elvis did not die. He just went home." When a major blockbuster Hollywood movie addresses the legend that Elvis was an alien, okay, that's how pervasive that rumor was. Of the funniest one I think I've ever seen is that Elvis had to go into hiding because he was a vampire hunter. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Then there's the, Elvis just had to get out of the limelight and he stepped down and opened a gas station in Michigan someplace. And,
no, Elvis.
There have been so many rumors.
What? Elvis was a Southern boy. He wouldn't be living in Michigan. I'm sorry.
Well, that's why nobody would look for him up there.
No offense to the Michigan people, but
I think
Elvis
even
would
Harvey
not have gone to up north. I don't see.
Could have picked Texas.
Yeah.
Elvis would have picked a little town in Mississippi, like where he's from. I mean, he's from Tupelo, Mississippi. He'd have gone back to Podunk town in Mississippi. I mean.
No, but then everybody would know he's somewhere in Mississippi.
Well,
so I think he could go closest to Louisiana or Texas would be the next place. He'd be somewhere in some little small.
Or somewhere on some big ranch out in the middle of rural Tennessee,
Since I used to actually know somebody that actually had a legitimate Elvis toe tag. Welcome to Morbid Elvis Memorabilia in Memphis.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh.
anything's
we didn't see
possible when it
that
comes
For
to that.
years,
We didn't get
people
to
had
see
Dr.
that in
Nicopola's
Memphis.
prescription bottles.
Oh my gosh.
And there were several Elvis toe tags because they kept getting stolen off the body.
Oh, no.
So yeah,
Oh my God.
I'm afraid
So you've
Elvis
seen the toe tag.
sloughed off this mortal coil and went on to other rewards.
I believe it. I believe he did.
However, even Harvey Keitel has played him in a couple of movies as Elvis, the lonely spirit, driving the highways and byways of Mississippi and occasionally giving somebody a ride into Memphis. So the thought that
bizarre.
Elvis's spirit still roams is still with us.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Don't know
And
what
you
to
know-
say. But if you got, now
Well-
I'm going to throw in the power of the living. If you've got that many people trying to think somebody up, if anybody else was going to get thought back into being, it would have to be Elvis.
Yeah, it would have to be.
Because
It would
all
have-
these years later, he still has millions of fans.
He does. He's the king.
I mean,
of
you talk
all.
about an evergreen fandom of people that do not give up. All these years later, and I mean, in 1977, his music was old. He wasn't a hot pop star in 77. He was a comeback artist at that point.
Well, yeah, he was in
And
Vegas.
his music is still selling and still, all these decades later. So it's easy to pick on Elvis and make fun of it, but oh my gosh, what a phenomenon.
He was a phenomenon. Of course he was. It is amazing.
So,
Very
if
amazing.
there's anybody out
Very
there
talented.
spiritually roaming the highways and doing interesting things, Elvis driving around in a big old 70s Cadillac, giving people a ride, that's a great image.
It is a great image. It's a great memory for him, If you got to remember Elvis, why not remember him like that? That's
Exactly.
awesome. That is awesome. Well, I have to say that Memphis definitely steals the thunder for having its own unique Halloween stories because, nobody else has an Elvis story except maybe somewhere in Michigan.
Well, Vegas has got equal claim to him also, and Vegas has got,
True.
you
yeah.
think
Well, that's
about the
true.
Hollywood legends in Vegas. Oh my gosh. I would say probably celebrity-wise, the most haunted place would have to be Hollywood or LA. I mean, if you want to get into the really, lurid stories, you get into the Black Dahlia, you get
Hollywood's
into...
pretty-
Oh yeah.
Hollywood's pretty haunted. I mean, you've got a lot of stuff in Hollywood. I
Yes.
mean,
well,
you
let's
have a
face
lot
it,
of-
Miami, a whole lot of people needed killing.
oh yeah.
Well, Vegas is the same
Miami's
way.
weird. Of course, I wrote that, the book, that Allan published, Miami's dark side. I mean, that, you have ghost stories in Miami. You've got UFOs in Miami. You've got alien stories. And Miami has probably more murders and murder-suicides than anywhere else. People go to Miami to die. I mean, if you've ever seen the show, what's the show about the guy that Dexter? That's the
Dexter.
opening tagline. People go to Miami to die, and it's really true. You've got a large percentage of older people, and they make suicide pacts. There's also been a lot of serial killers who have, even though they didn't start off in South Florida, they made their way there. And since I'm dressed like the evil one, I can tell you that Miami also had its own satanic cult that was there in the 1970s that supposedly was deep in the Everglades.
Ooh.
And it had a lot of people who were involved in, not just satanic rituals, but also human sacrifices. It supposedly had numerous serial killers who were part of this cult, two of whom were Otis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas. And another man whose name escapes me, but it's in the book, so you can get the book and read it. But they actually called him the El Padrino. And he was a young man who was Cuban, and he was part of it. And he wound up going down to Matamoros, Mexico, and starting a cult there. And he was known as El Padrino, and killed a lot of people. And they wound up getting him when they busted a farm in Matamoros, Mexico, and found a huge vat with body parts in it. One of whom was a person who was a missing college student from Texas.
Yes.
So, and that cult actually began in Miami. So there you go. Miami's a very, very spooky place.
Yeah,
And
we have
it's a
very
place
rich,
if you wanna
spooky
see-
reputations everywhere. It's amazing.
Vegas would be
Oh,
the
yeah.
other one. The famous
Absolutely.
desert stories, going out to the desert.
Yeah, that's a creepy place. I'm sure there's a lot of creepy criminal stories up in Vegas. But we're going to take a little break, and we're going to be right back. And we're going to talk about some of the New Orleans Halloween stories. We'll be right back.
Imagine it's the year 2020. With so many podcasts, streams, and interesting stations, you've finally found your paranormal hotspot. We want to personally invite you to join the discussion by tuning in and listening to The Seance Room. With all new and returning guests, intriguing investigative explorations, and scintillating conversations with the beyond. With your hosts, Victor and Lynda Salazar.
Hey, Victor here. Are you ready to evoke strange curiosities? Walk through parallel dimensions and delve together into the controversial science of paraphenomena.
Afraid to question the shadow in your room, footsteps down the hall when no one's home? Bothered you'll become one of those people? Leaving no stone unturned, no topic unanswered. Dim the lights, turn up the volume. This is Lynda. You reached the threshold of your Parapodcast.
Let's not forget Norma, aka Mama C.
Hi, I'm Mama C. Grab your favorite cocktail, find your comfy spot, and join me as we engage in some supernatural interactions that will knock your boots off.
Oh, and I'm Rick. I just sit behind all the pretty blinking lights. Be ready.
Welcome to the Seance. Haunted airwaves, conversations with the beyond, chilling messages from spirits and odd interviews. The spirits are going live. Clara Smith.
Okay, so we are back. Now, of course, New Orleans has no shortage of spooky little ghost stories, but we have a couple of ones that are specific to Halloween, and many people might say it falls right in line with some of the urban legends, but a lot of people swear by this one. Now, this is from a place called Lafitte, Louisiana, which is south of Louisiana, down in the bayous, down where the swamps are, down where the alligators are. It is where it's named after Jean Lafitte, the pirate, who buried all his treasure down in Barataria. So it's Barataria, Lafitte. But supposedly on the old Lafitte Highway, right around midnight on Halloween, the vision of a woman in white, the classic woman in white, comes out of the cemetery, and she is seen walking down the road. Now, some people have different variations of this, where she's actually hitchhiking and she gets in a car with someone and she tells them where she wants to go, and they bring her there and she disappears. Others just see her, and others say that she actually comes after the car. So there's all kind of variations of this woman. But from what I understand, it's very reminiscent of some of the stories that you hear from up around the Northeast coast about the person that they call Resurrection Mary. Because Resurrection Mary is always a young girl. She's always the lady in white. Oftentimes, Resurrection Mary is a young woman who was killed on the night of her prom. So she shows up in a white prom dress. And she's in the prom dress, and she gets separated from her date, and she's trying to get back home, and she gets in a cab, or she hitchhikes, and she catches a ride. And, of course, someone lets her in, and then they're having a conversation with her, and then she vanishes. And actually, during some of my travels many, many years ago, I took like 2 weeks, and I rented a car, and I went up to New York, and I flew in, and we drove back, and we went to different places, filming and just ghost hunting all up and down the East Coast. And actually, there is a grave of a young girl by the name of Mary in Long Island. And they claim to be the original location of the Resurrection Mary. But nonetheless, this young lady in white still appears at Halloween on that old Lafitte Highway on the bridge at midnight. Now, is it just an urban legend? I would say come on down for Halloween, take a little ride down there, and check it out for yourself and see what happens. Do y'all have a story like that in your area where you got the Halloween hitchhiker, Lynda?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Out in the country roads going towards what is known as Skidmore, Texas. There is a cemetery out there, and they say that you may pick up the girl in white, and she disappears in the car as well. And some people have claimed that they have seen her and that they have even gone back to her house and have even found she's always asked to be dropped off right there by the cemetery because there's some homes right around there and she can walk to her home. And when folks go looking for her, they give her jacket, and they give them their jacket, and they find the jacket on her stone.
Well, a lot of people, slough off those stories about the disappearing cab fare. But, back when we had Hurricane Katrina, which was 2005, a lot of people died, and there were a lot of people who drowned in the city. Some people in their homes, some people in the streets. There was a large amount of people who were never claimed. And a lot of these bodies were brought to the city morgue, and it took a very long time to try to find who they belonged to. And some people never, ever, ever got claimed. They were listed as John and Jane Does. But nonetheless, at some point in time, those people had to be given a burial. And what happened was they were eventually given a jazz funeral. I guess certain businesses, is actually a plaque in the Katrina Memorial that gives all the names of the businesses that donated the money. And they were put in mausoleums that now sit in what is called the Katrina Memorial inside the old Charity Hospital Cemetery. Now, the morbid part about this is that these people were not put to rest until 3 years after their deaths.
Mm-hmm.
They were in cold storage for 3 years. That's a long time. Now, right after Katrina, for the first 2 years, we didn't have any business. We didn't have any business. I was working 5 jobs, one of which I was teaching at a college. But nonetheless, I did get the emails for the company. I continued to get the emails for the company, and I got over and over again as people started going back into that mid-city area, all on Canal Street. And that's a very low-lying area. It's very near the cemetery, number one. Number two, it's kind of what they call the bottom of the cup. They always say, or the bottom of the bowl. New Orleans is like a bowl, and it would fill up with the water, and Mid-City is considered to be part of that bottom of the bowl, that low-lying area, and it did take on a lot of water that sat there for a very long time. Now, a lot of people that, you have to realize that when that flood came, it was 2 days after the hurricane. So everybody thought they were safe. The hurricane came, it left, nothing happened. So 2 days later, people are doing what people do. People are walking their dogs, people are sitting out at coffee shops, people are on the streetcar line, people are riding their bikes, and all of a sudden, water's coming up out of the drainage system. Water just starts backing up into the city. And one guy that I know was on a bicycle. He's out riding his bike. And he said it came up so fast that he fortunately was close enough to a ramp that was going up the interstate. And he got on his bike and he went up the ramp. Wow. So this happened. It took a lot of people by surprise. And a lot of people tried to outrun it. A lot of people then began to outswim it, and they died. And what's very strange, in favor of those stories of the person that they see and gets in the car, for the longest time, I got emails from people when they started cleaning up their homes and businesses on Canal Street, when people started moving back in and rebuilding in the Canal Street area. People were calling and they were emailing, and it was the same story over and over again, claiming to see people walking up and down the streetcar line late at night and kind of aimlessly, like zombies, just kind of wandering up and down as if they're lost. I even got a few emails from people who were cab drivers, because you got to realize back then they didn't have Uber and Lyft and all that stuff. People took cabs. And I got correspondence from cab drivers who claimed that they would get a call to come and pick somebody up down at Canal Street at the cemeteries late at night, and they would get there and a person would get in the car, sometimes male, sometimes female, sometimes 2 people, and they would give an address in the area, and they would say, "Can you bring me home, please?" And the cab driver would bring them to what they considered to be home, and it would either be a torn down building, a boarded up building, but clearly something that no one lived in, and when they turned around, there was nobody in the cab. Now, I got repeated reports of this, and it stopped after a while. Well, I didn't realize that those people were buried 3 years later. They were very, very secretive about this. This was not on CNN. This was not on the local news. Nobody heard about it. So I didn't really find out about this until 2017 when I started the bus tour out in that area. And it was like, oh my goodness, why didn't anybody hear about this? I'm a native here. Who nobody knew. So I started thinking about those stories that people gave, about the people wandering up and down the streetcar line, about the people who were trying to get in a cab to find their way back home, and about those people who didn't get buried for 3 years. And I thought about it, if they were never put to rest for all that time, and they didn't know what hit them, it would stand to reason that when they crossed over, they didn't realize they were dead necessarily. And they really were trying to find their way back home. And it's really funny that once they were buried and put to rest, the story stopped. They ended very abruptly, like nobody ever talked about it again. And it wasn't until I started that bus tour that I realized, and I said, wow, it makes so much sense. And it just so much more meaning to that phrase, they didn't know what hit them. because literally they didn't know. It just took them, it blindsided them. And then, of course, they weren't put to rest for so long. And I really, truly believe that, I don't believe in people being trapped necessarily. I don't believe that. But I do believe that people can be in shock just like they are here, or in denial or confusion, and not know what happened to them. And I really think that some of these cases where people see someone and then they vanish, I think that there could be some validity to it. But I do have another Halloween story before we go, and it's one of my favorite ones because it happened in a bar that used to be called Yo Mama's. That was right next door to where we used to end our tours, where we began our tours, and we used to end them there in the upstairs. And many, many years ago, it was actually owned by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Greenlee. And Mr. Greenlee, the whole upstairs was decorated beautifully. We used to even have a coffin up there, and there were cages up there. It was kind of, very, very, very strange decor. So I know, only in New Orleans, Linda. But anyway, as the story goes, and this is very cliche, Mr. Greenlee, on Halloween one night, decided to decorate upstairs, and he thought it would be really cool to play a prank on his neighborhood regulars who came to the bar by pretending that he was hanging up there. So he kind of made himself up to look like some kind of a dummy, and he tried to hang himself, and he was going to scare them when they came up. When everybody was in there, he figured, well, I'll just be hanging here, and then I'll jump off, and everybody will, freak out. And unfortunately, the chair slipped, and he really hung himself. Well, it was days later before anybody realized that he was dead up there. So Mr. Greenlee, so the whole time through the Halloween, people were coming up there, having drinks, having Halloween parties. Everybody's having these festivities, and they're getting the hanged man, and they're thinking it's a dummy, when all along it was actually Mr. Greenlee. Now, a lot of people would say, urban legend, everybody's got the hanging man that hanged himself accidentally on Halloween night, right? But what they don't have is a bar that when you're sitting at it about 2 o'clock in the morning and you're upstairs and the only thing outside that side door is a balcony that leads out into the courtyard. I have on many occasions witnessed the screen door opening and shutting as if somebody came through and no one was there. Now, if only I see it, that's, I could have imagined it, right? But it would be a situation where we're all sitting there after work and we see this and we just all look at each other and go, okay, did you see that? And everybody says, yeah. We go, Greenlee. And you would actually see the doors open and shut with him still coming in and out. So there's your Halloween story for you. So I guess that's the end of our show. We've kind of run out of time. Thank you guys for joining us for this Halloween edition. And actually it's the day before Halloween, but we're starting to celebrate Halloween early. And
yes,
you guys have a safe Halloween. Don't eat too much candy, and watch out for those hitchhikers walking along the sides of the road. Happy Halloween, everybody. We'll see you next week.